Good morning, everybody. How are you? Give me a thumbs up. Where is everybody? How can we see everybody, Travis? So, hi, everybody. My name is Phil Valentine, and I am the Executive Director of the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, CCAR for short. I've been with CCAR for 22 years now, hard to believe. Been in personal recovery myself for 33. And, as you can see, my hair is no longer dark. It is silver and gray. But that was the whole purpose, right? To get to this point. And I'm also going to be facilitating recovery coaching basics with my esteemed colleague.
Oh, you're just throwing it at me. My name is Stacy Charpentier. Welcome to our Recovery Coaching Basics class.
How is everybody? Give me a thumbs up. Oh, I see a lot of guys without their cameras on. I don't know what that's about because I do want to see you guys. I definitely want to see you. So if you can turn your cameras on and we can say hello and
Good
all
morning.
of that. Good morning, Susan. Good to see
Good
you.
morning, Phil. Nobody wants to be on camera this morning.
Well, I know that feeling. That's one of this Zoom world that we live in, right? That we
Yes,
all have
it
our
is.
own habits and styles and everything like this. So just a quick primer about our Zoom basics, right? And so that's the next slide, Travis. And we're doing this for the first time from our media suite here. So we're trying to record some of this, so we'll have it available for other folks down the road. So bear with us if we have any technology glitches. The other piece to this is Recovery Coaching Basics is we have a sea of icebergs, let's say, and we're going to go along the tips of all of them. And in the full Recovery Coach Academy, we would dive deeper into each of these topics. So everybody's well aware of the mics, right? Where you mute yourself on the lower left-hand corner. That's also where your camera is. We have the ability, if you look over on the bottom toolbar, that there's reactions where you can raise your hands. And then at times we are going to ask you to break out into small groups and have group discussions. So does anybody have any questions about how to work a Zoom meeting at this point? It sounds like everybody's good, Stacy. How are we going to see you? So we're going to have to go see. I'll just keep doing that.
We'll
There's
just
me,
keep turning it.
and there's Stacy. This is high tech right now.
Yeah.
We're doing really
Turning the laptop from
Right.
one person to the next.
really high tech, but we're okay. We can get
We'll do it.
until I push it off the
Until
back.
he pushes it off the back of the table.
Right. So one of the first things we want to do is have you guys introduce yourselves, and we have a pretty simple format. We ask for your name. Recovery status is usually one of four things: that you can be a person in recovery, a family member, friend, or ally. And we have always identified the recovery community in those categories, and we have always given equal weight to each of those categories. We believe that addiction and recovery is a full societal issue, and so we want to enlist everybody that's interested in the cause. And we're very curious, Stacy and I, just about what is your motivation for attending. And I need to see if I had a participant list, I could call people to.
Click participants and they'll pop right up.
There we go. So we're doing all kinds of things here at once. So I opened up the participant list, and I'm just going to go straight down. Stacy, but you didn't share a little bit about your recovery, and why are you here?
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Just to be another voice in the room? No, absolutely not. So I am I mentioned already that my name is Stacy Charpentier. I'm the Director of Training here at CCAR. My recovery status is that I'm not a person in recovery myself, but I am a family member. My father struggled with addiction for most of his life, and upon coming to CCAR about 8.5 years ago, when I first took the RCA, I realized very much that even though I wasn't a person who struggled with a personal addiction, I struggled through what my father's addiction was to me. And so I've been kind of in this 8.5 years going through my own recovery journey. And what I hope about this training is, as Phil said, we want to get this training in front of as many people as possible, because with the millions of people that are struggling each day, if we can help one person by maybe asking a good question or just being there with empathy, then I think that's a good thing. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
All right. So we're going to go through this list and using the prompts. Just tell us your name, your recovery status. Also, if you want to just say where you're from, because we get people from all over, and that's kind of exciting to see. And what your motivation for attending is. The other part we're doing is making sure everybody's equipment is working okay. So I see Aaron. You're the first one. Aaron, would you like to say hello?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Erin. I'm in Los Angeles. I am in recovery 4.5 years, actually, as of the August 7th. So that's pretty cool. I was kind of gray area drinker, or so I thought, when I decided to quit drinking, and then had a horrendous year of trying to kind of no longer use cannabis or alcohol, and realized that that is not something I should mess around with. Like Stacy said, I have a family of addiction. And I'm here because I have a day job and it's not super fulfilling. I'm not really able to give back. And I all of a sudden was struck with a lightning bolt that I think being a sober coach would be a great way to help people, especially people like me who sort of felt like the only option for them was to just quit and didn't realize that it would open up a whole Pandora's box of issues. So I know that there's the full coaching program. I was just kind of coming to check this out to make sure the program was right for me and make sure that I'm on the right track. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. And now we have another Aaron with Aaron G. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, good morning. Aaron Goldwater from a place called Townsville in Australia, which is up in the tropics. It's about just after midnight here. Sorry, I missed that.
Well, I just said, what? You're calling from Australia? I'm like, what?
Yeah, just a little bit southeast of you.
Yeah,
guys.
just a little.
Sorry, southwest.
Mm-hmm.
We down here, we have a program called the NDIS, which is a federal government funding program for individuals who have disabilities. And I happen to be a support coordinator, which is a kind of like an advocate. And I'm working with a lot of guys who are in and out of prison. A lot of them have got a lot of drug issues and addiction issues of various types, and I'm trying to work out how I might be able to help them.
Very cool. Thank you, Aaron. Cassie.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Cassie. My recovery status is in recovery myself. I've been almost 3 years sober from alcohol. My motivation is my kids, because I hit a really rough patch and lost my kids and 2 of my children. And, I had another son after that, and I got both of them back. Sorry. Both my kids back recently, and I'm doing really good, and I just want to be a better mom, and if I can help people through it after seeing my niece pass away from heroin addiction and other battles, I just want to be there to help people. And if I could get through losing my kids to getting them back in less than a year, I want to be able to help people do the same if they're going through it.
Thank you, Cassie. Welcome, all of you.
No.
Deputy Brandon August. That's the next name on the list. He's on the phone, and you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Perfect.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I just checked in with our IT guy. He's trying to look for a camera for me. The two computers I have set up here don't have a camera on it, unfortunately. My name is Brandon August. I'm with Saratoga County Sheriff's Office in upstate New York. I did have a family member who struggled with cocaine and an alcohol addiction. I was younger. Growing up was my father, but he has recovered since then. And, just working in law enforcement, we see this stuff every day. So my captain reached out to me, offered the training out, and I thought, attending the training, whatever I could learn, whatever I could hear from people who are in recovery to help me out on the road and help families that deal with it on a daily basis, I think would just be a great attribute to not only working on the job, but also in my personal life. So,
Thank you, Brandon. Is it Johan? Or is it a Johan? Is it a Johan? Moise?
It's Johan. I mean, people call me what I answer to whatever. Johanna, Johan, Johan.
Gotcha.
So I'm So my name is Joanne Morris. I'm from Massachusetts. And I am in the medical field and decided to pursue more knowledge on the recovery and addiction field because I have some of my daughter's closest friends, I have to say, died from overdose in their early 20s. And I want to be able to help and to better understand that field of crisis been going on, especially in the youth community. And I thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Welcome. Johnny Morris?
Hi, my name is Johnny Morris, and I'm from Galesburg, Connecticut. I've been clean for over 2 years now, and I know about recovery. I learned it about recovery from the age of 16, and today I need to help other people because I have a lot to offer. I have a lot to give, to share with other people who are struggling with this addiction. And also, I want to go into the working field as a recovery coach. And so far, things have been looking up for me. And I have an interview tomorrow for Lebanon Pines. Hopefully, that'll be the start for me. Thank you.
Congratulations, Johnny. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
Melissa. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, it kept coming back off every time I clicked it.
Yeah.
So my name is Melissa, and I work for the Port Huron Police Department in Michigan. I am the analyst here. I have a very good friend who went through a very long stint of drug abuse and is now a recovery coach for Odyssey House here in town. She's been recovered for 4 years. And with the police department, we have teamed up with Odyssey House to start a mobile overdose response team.
Very cool.
And I give them the stats and everything for that so that they know who to reach and how to reach them. So Ken, the head of Odyssey, just sent this over and said, hey, why don't you just do the basic one so that if anytime you can come out on Mort with us, you have some experience, a little bit of hearing from other people and a little bit of knowledge. And I would love to actually become a full recovery coach, but our program here is during the day and I work during the day. So it's kind of hard for me to get the training at the moment, but so that's why I'm here.
Welcome. Mike Stokes.
We know Mike Stokes.
Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Mike.
Hi, Phil and Stacy.
Hi.
So I'm a lieutenant with the Waterbury Police Department. I would consider myself an ally. My father, grandfather struggled with alcohol. I myself, from time to time, struggled with it also. But I'm here today because it's been over a year since I took the Recovery Coach Academy. I figured why not always be learning, see if I could be a resource for CCAR. If there's anybody out there who wants to start a program, the Waterbury Police Department, we started one over a year ago. We have 2 CCAR trained recovery coach professionals that work with us, and we go out to overdoses and we try to get the people into treatment. The program's been very successful. UConn's collecting our data now, so very shortly we'll be having data to prove how successful the program is. And if I could just say out there for everybody, CCAR is the place to get your training, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm always want to be learning. So hopefully I'll even learn more today, what I can do. And I'm taking my recovery coach professional, we don't call it exam, but interview on the 25th. So
Are you?
it'll kind of be a little refresher for me. Yes. And so I'm here. If anybody, I put my email in there. If anybody wants more information about our program, or I could just say, CCAR is the best. So, and I'm also here with Officer Nate Sheehan from my department. I wanted to bring him on board. There was some mix-up in getting him signed up. So we're trying to do that now, but he's with me. If you allow it, he could talk to just his experience, and I'm trying to get more and more officers involved with recovery and helping people. Thank you.
So does Nate want to say, do you want to say hello too? Come on, bring him on, say hello.
Yeah, sure. How you doing? Police officer.
You have to get a little closer to the mic, I think.
About that, police officer of the city of Waterbury. I have a family member that passed away a couple years ago from an overdose, and it was my wife's sister, and I saw how hard it hit her, and I didn't really know how to help her emotionally, things like that. Working with Lieutenant Stokes here and his current staff has, helped me help my family.
Oops.
Oh, I think they froze.
They froze. Okay. Well, when they come back, I think they froze, their internet froze. That happens a lot sometimes on Zoom, as we're well aware. So let's jump over to Ryan.
Hello, I'm Ryan O'Connell. I'm a police officer in Norwich, Connecticut. I've worked for 3 different agencies: the Narragansett Indian Tribe, the Mashantucket Pequot Tribe, as a police officer. And my father, who's a Vietnam vet, struggled really bad when I was a teenager, and ended up getting clean when I actually became a police officer. So
wow,
I kind of learned a lot from him and how to deal with people who are struggling with addiction. He actually helped me understand it a lot better. And also, we started a podcast for community outreach called Community Off the Cuff. And one of our first episodes was with CCAR. So we're trying to learn as much as we can because, I don't know, as most of you know, Connecticut, in Norwich anyway, I've been to a lot of overdose deaths. I've had to talk to family members. I've had to try to, give them some closure. And we work with the FBI, Safe Streets Task Force, and it's just it seems like it's nonstop. So whatever we can do police wise to learn, maybe guide people in the right direction, that's what we're trying to do. And that's another reason why we did that. We were doing a podcast and trying to get as much community outreach as possible. That's about it.
Thank you, Ryan. Susan.
Sorry, guys, my computer is a little acting funny. Good morning. Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Good morning, guys. My name is Susan D. Almeida. I'm a recovery coach for Recovery Network programs, but I work the integrated program at Optimus Healthcare in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm from Danbury, Connecticut. And I'm actually a recovery coach here for about the last year. I'm a woman in recovery, be about 4 years, I think, in January. I kind of forget about it now, to be honest. But I do it because somebody did it for me almost 4 years ago. And it's kind of like my passion. I look at it as, I used to be a teacher for autistic kids. I look at it as teaching. I almost look at it as looking at it as if I'm teaching people how to relearn how to live life without alcohol and drugs.
Thank you, Susan. Welcome.
You're
Glad
welcome.
you're here. Tori, and I see that Sashira just joined us, but we will get to Sashira after Tori.
Good. I think it's morning, everyone. It's afternoon where I am. I am actually Tori West. I'm located in Lagos, Nigeria, by way of South Carolina. So I live here temporarily. I did the millennial thing. While I could work from anywhere in the world virtually because of COVID, I took advantage and moved to a whole nother country. So in the United States in October. But with that being said, I am an ally. As a full-time entrepreneur, I work with nonprofits and state agencies in South Carolina, doing community outreach and education about public health crises. And so one of the things that I'm working on right now to get off the ground, of course, I've been working with opioids and doing opioid training and education about alternatives to opioids. But most recently, I've been tasked with tackling safe disposal and creating a community recovery support within the faith-based community. So to get more churches involved in understanding recovery and reducing the stigma, and actually having them open to their doors to things like 12-step programs, so that there can be more community support. So that is why I am here, as I've done key informant interviews with many people who are in long-term recovery from things like opioid use disorder. I'm really trying to gather as much information so that the program that I put together is culturally correct, and that it can work within our community as well.
Thank you, Tori. Welcome. Sashira, would you like to say hi?
Good morning. Sorry, it's kind of dark where I am. It's Sashina.
Sashina. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Sashina. No R in there.
Gotcha.
I am currently starting with a recovery coaching for our small reservation in Idaho, actually Lapwai, Idaho. I am probably going on around 3 years sober, and I've been wanting to help our community. Again, it's a small reservation, so we see many different people that struggle with alcoholism, addictions, and one by one, slowly, our community is starting to find that there is help out there. There is hope. There is a way to get out of this dark place that everybody is once stuck in. And being on a small reservation, a lot of these people have kids. A lot of these people barely have the what it takes to raise their kids. And they have not just one, maybe 5 to 7 kids. And not only are they suffering, their children are suffering. So we have a long way to go. And there's only 2 recovery coaches on our reservation. And again, that's in Lapwai, Idaho on the Nez Perce Reservation. It's morning here. So I was having a little bit of trouble getting logged in, and I finally got it. So thank you guys for this opportunity. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sashina. Is there anybody else that we missed? I don't think so, but I've been known not to be right a lot of times. All right. So again, let's move on and see what we hope to cover today. Course. I hope many of you, they received this manual, right, Stacy? So everybody got their recovery basics little manual. A lot of information there. I know we asked you to do some pre-work as well. So a lot of your discussions will be based on your pre-work. And Stacy and I will offer some insights here and there. We're trying to facilitate a process, and it's going to be a very quick process, but it'll be a packed 4 hours, that's for sure. So the normal Recovery Coach Academy is 30 hours of training, and we have other additional offerings to support those as well. So we want you to be able to define and increase fluency in the language of recovery. That's part of one of our goals. We want you to build capacity to understand, support, and advocate for those in or seeking recovery. Learn about specific skill sets, keys to supporting recovery and recovery coaching, and create a learning community to advance the recognition, acceptance, and support of recovery. And the agenda is also on page 3 in your manual, so you can see all of that. We are going to be moving quickly, and I've said that a few times because we are going to be moving quickly, and I just want to set the expectation about what we are going to be doing and covering at a rapid pace. So, anybody have any questions or anything about the overall process before we get into it a little bit? All right. So the very first and the essence of what we're talking about, and you can see some working agreements on page 4 in your manual, and that is just judging who's here and seeing who's here, my assessment is we'll be fine, but you can scan those, and we're going to jump right to page 5. And we talk a lot about this as we've summarized the Recovery Coach Academy into these key components. It's listening actively, discovering and managing your own stuff, and one of what I think, as you evolve as a recovery coach, your questions become better and better and better. So you really start to say, not what is the solution that I can give here, what is the advice or wisdom I can impart to an individual, it's what question can I ask? And I know for me in my recovery journey and in my journey as an executive director, when somebody asked me a really good question, it literally shifted the trajectory of my life over a question. And that's what we do as coaches. And that in itself is how we treat people as resources, all right? Because we are going to assume they have the answer inside. All we need to do is ask the right question to draw that out. Is there anything else you want to add about with that, Stacy? Because we talk a lot about
we do talk a lot about the stool, and part of what we're going to do today in this quick 4 hours is to give you an understanding of each of the legs of the stool, like what those skill sets are, as well as understand what it means to treat people as resources, so that you have some basis for understanding why these became our, recovery coaching principles, and why we believe so strongly in really focusing in on these. And so as you'll see as we go further, we will get to and we will touch on each and every one of these points throughout our time together.
So we're going to do a quick breakout. It's just going to be 5 minutes. We're going to break you out probably into 3 or 4 groups. That'll be up to our Producer Travis, he's maybe his middle name ought to be Extraordinaire Coet because he's just so good at this. So we're going to break you out into 4 groups. I want you to look at page 5 in your manual and just share with each other some initial thoughts. Not a long conversation, just an overview. Is everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do for the next 5 minutes? If so, give me a thumbs up in the camera. Nathan, let me see your thumb up there. Thank you, Nathan. All right, we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Hey, Melissa, I'll tell you that you remind me. I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2015, and you remind me of one of my co-hikers, Paradox. So just saying that I have like this transference that I'm automatically fond of you because she was awesome. So I'm assuming that you're awesome too.
That's a good assumption.
Yeah.
Yep, no doubt.
I love it.
Have you hiked the Appalachian Trail?
I have not.
No.
I would love to, though.
Good. See, I knew it. I knew it.
It was an intuition, yes.
All right, so welcome back to your first little breakout. Hope that was helpful. That is kind of like the foundation of exactly like Stacy said. So we're going to keep moving and cruising. If you go, one of the legs of the stool is about how well we listen, right? And we're going to do, in the chat box, there's a question on the prompt. What are ways to demonstrate active listening? And I know you've got page 7, but try to not use the ones on page 7. Put them in the chat box, some of the ways that you know how to show people that you're actively listening, right? Tori says eye contact, correct. But we also have to be careful with eye contact and cultures, right? Because some people, eye contact is a sign of disrespect and of challenge. So you just have to be aware of those kinds of things. Body language, observing non-verbal cues, exactly, not interrupting. I know when my wife's name is Sandy, and when she says, I want to talk to you about something, I should probably put down my cell phone. I should probably turn off the TV, right? Avoid those distractions and let her know I'm listening. If you look on page 7, and there's a list here of some of the things that we have found that are very key to active listening. We're not going to do what we said. And but I might have you pick out one or something like that you want to talk about. All right.
That's more than fine.
And so what I was talking about is the second one, right? And I like the first one, when you focus your attention on the subject. And that can be, the subject can be what is being talked about, or the subject is the person that's doing the talking. So it's a both and. And if you avoid distractions, and those are distractions to you. They may not be to the speaker who you're listening to, but if you have the TV on in the background and that's a distraction, mute it, turn it off, turn your phone down. If it's really noisy, go to someplace that's quiet. Do you have one that resonates with you, Stacy?
Oh my goodness, all of these kind of resonate with me. But one of the things is really being other directed. So when you focus on the person communicating, I think that means turning everything else off in your mind, including formulating your response, right? A lot of times when we're in conversation, we're kind of formulating what we want our response to be or how we're going to react to what this person is saying. And then we're really not giving it 100% because we're focusing on what our reaction is going to be. So if you really try to focus on the words that somebody is saying, maybe acknowledge, some of the things is like reflective listening, like maybe acknowledge how you're feeling towards it and not get too hung up on what my response needs to be. This way you allow the conversation to really go. I love when people say holding space for somebody, because that really means that I'm just sitting here listening to you, and then I will take a pause and then respond once you've finished. And it allows for the conversation to really focus in what that other person is saying. And that also hits some of these other things about, being aware of their emotional state and things such as that. It really gives you that opportunity to do a few of these things if you can just kind of tune in to what that person is actually saying with all of their emotion and body language, etc.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of holding space. Sorry, but Stacy and I might do that. Some people like that term. I don't, but that's why we do this together.
This is why we do this together.
Right. And we learn to have fun with this. I like this little prompt too. Remember, listen and silent have the same letters, right? So when you're listening, you are mostly silent. And Sandy and I have also, my wife and I, so we will do the reflective listening part, and we've grown to appreciate this statement. If I hear you, just to make sure I understand what you've said so far, and I repeat back what she says, and we both know what we're doing, but we appreciate that we're making that effort. When in the chat box, I'm going to ask you a question. It's not the same question that's on the bottom of 7, which is also a good question. And make your own notes. Why do you think active listening is important? How, in the chat box, answer this question. How do you feel when you've been really listened to? How do you feel? Heard. Okay, you're heard, but how does that make you feel emotionally? Like I matter, appreciated, respected, right? How do you feel when you've really been listened to? Understand. Like Johnny says, good, with capital letters. I like that. Valued. Like a weight has been lifted, right? You share in the burden. And you're worthy of someone's time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's true, right? Accepted. And these are, so one of the greatest gifts you can give a person in recovery or another person or as a coach is your presence. It's the gift of presence. That's why it's called the present. And when you do that, people feel everything you just said. And that's because you're listening. You're not telling them what to do or how to do it, which leads us right into the next page, right? And if you are going to pick up any concepts about recovery coaching at all over these 4 hours, you've just heard the first one is listen, listen, listen. The second one has to do with your attitude about how you're viewing the person in front of you. If you look on page 8, we have a spectrum of attitudes, and William Lofquist used this in prevention, and he was really talking about how to work with youth, but let's take a look at it. And I'm just going to summarize, but you can view people and treat them like objects. You all heard the term objectify. It's when you just tell them what to do. They have no idea what they're doing. You are the superior. You're just going to tell them what to do. You can treat them as recipients, which means they might need a little guidance, but you're really going to try to maneuver them into doing what you think they ought to do and give them a little say in it. When you treat them as resources, it's not a resource for you. It's not a resource for other people. How this term is used here is that they are the best resource on their own experience. That I said this before, that they have intuitively know the solution for them. Now we've seen thousands of people in the emergency department. We ask them the question about how can we help you with your recovery today? I think you could count on one hand, the times they say, I don't know. When we ask, how can we help you with your recovery today, they know what they want. They know what they need to do. And that is a dramatic shift from how they've been treated in the past. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or insights they'd like to share with the large group about this concept, treating people as objects, recipients, and resources? It's vital. And the way that Lofquist talked about it, let's say that we are planning an event with youth, all right? We are the adults, and we want to say, let's do like a safe prom graduation. If we treat the kids as objects, we're going to tell them, this is what this graduation is going to look like, and this is what you're going to do. Recipients is, we will still know what we want the event to look like, but we're going to say, you might need a lot of guidance. You have some say, but you're going to need a lot of guidance because you don't really know what you want to do. And then if you treat the youth as resources, you are equal partners in the planning. And that's oftentimes the mindset we want to take with a recovery as a recovery coach, is that we're partners. I'm not like leading you down the road. I'm your coach. You do this. I'm your guide. I'm walking alongside you. So this concept of object, recipient, resources is so important that I'm actually going to break you out for 8 minutes. And in your small groups, you're going to talk about this. Is everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do? Thumbs up in the screen. Tori, where's your thumb up? I want to see your thumbs up.
Yeah.
She's not clear. Well, that's
not clear.
Well, you'll figure it out in your small group then. We're going to talk about what it means to be treated like an object, recipient, and a resource. All right, I'll see you back here in 8 minutes.
PowerPoints.
So welcome back. As you're coming back again, I can't overemphasize the importance of this concept of treating people with as a resource. I've had many times, I facilitated the Recovery Coach Academy, the Full Week Academy, more than 50 times. And we review this piece, and people often come back and talk about how it changed for the good their relationship with a teenager. Just because they were trying to tell their teenagers what to do, and instead they pivoted and asked a good question and had a completely different result. You know, and with the same outcome that the parent wanted, but instead of telling the person what to do, it was more of a question like, Matthew, how long do you think like that garbage is going to sit there before it starts to stink? You might not, but that might not be the best example. But
sounds like a good question to me.
Right. Oh, so Dad, you want me to take that out? Yeah, that would be a great idea. You know, okay. So I want people to stretch a little bit here. I'm going to ask you if any of you would share what your conversation was like in your small group, what you learned or what you might have taken away. And this is where one of you gets brave and unmutes or raises your hand and speaks to the rest of us.
Excuse me, I'll share. And
thanks, Erin.
Somebody else wants to jump in. Yeah. It was funny. When I was looking at the book yesterday, I kind of felt this idea of treating people like a resource kind of confronting. I think I was really glad, Phil, that you said it's not a resource for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay, good. You know, because I was like, people like resources, you think of something that you could use up. And when I went through the exercise of sort of people who've treated you like an object, like what you just said about a teenager, I had a lot of problems when I was a teenager with my mom, and nobody treated me like an object more than my mom did. I was just her possession. And the more I acted out, the more she just didn't like her possession anymore. You know, I wasn't harming. And give it's nice as a recovery coach, if I hadn't been aware of falling in the trap of like the savior, like I've been there, I know how to do it, you need to do it my way, let me save you, let me show you. And that comes from some of my, I think, family histories. My dad, I always wanted to save him. He passed at 57, with, you know, years of addiction, alcohol mainly, but at the end there was prescription drugs too, which was unfortunate. And then the idea of treating people like a resource. And, you know, in my own experience, I was ready when I was ready, and I was my own best advocate. When I decided to get sober, I, in some ways, couldn't be stopped despite the challenges, because I just knew it was time, and I had to, and there was no other option. So for me, it was kind of, I came full circle to being kind of resistant to the idea, to being like, oh gosh, this is going to be, you know, my sort of North Star in this work. So thanks for letting me.
Thank you, Erin. Spot on. Love it. Anybody else care to share about that last conversation you had? Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, so I mean, our group was all primarily law enforcement, and we kind of, you know, I went into like the whole object thing, you know, being treated as an object. I mean, when I was in the police academy, we're kind of just like, you know, you get yelled at, you kind of get broken down to get built back up a little bit. And I mean, they pretty much all agreed with that. And then I went into in our city in Norwich, we had, you know, some protests, some civil unrest, and out of that, we actually learned from it, and we met with activists and created a group called Rose City United, and it really helped out, because there were a lot of people that, like, you know, yeah, you know, we want to get some stuff off our chest, and they're like yelling at the police. And, you know, there was a group of cops, and we're like, you know, wow, instead of like yelling and we understand, we get it, why don't we just come to the table and really sit down and work on these issues. And for the last, I mean, I think we had our 40th meeting. We've had multiple events with kids. We worked with you know, they help us with this podcast. We bring in people that maybe, you know, think different than how we think, and we just kind of have those conversations, which is kind of like a two-way street. So I think people really hear that, and they enjoy that, and it's definitely gotten out into our community locally here in Norwich. And then I'm a hockey coach, so I got hired by the New York Rangers to coach youth hockey. So, I mean, that's kind of like as a resource that's not police related. I feel that coaching and like building up kids and giving them kind of like an outlet to give them some stress relief really helps. So, and then Nathan and Melissa kind of like, you know, went into pretty much similar things, but that's how I felt, you know, and that's the conversation that we had.
I'm glad you mentioned the hockey coaching, because part of the academy, as I had some influence on the development of it, was I realized I was a soccer coach, travel soccer, for 15 years. I have 5 kids and coached all of them in soccer at one point or another. And I remember they asked me to be a travel coach, and I was like pretty new to coaching, and I spent an entire game yelling at the kids and telling them what not to do. And my assistant looks at me and goes, "You did a great job of yelling." I was like, I didn't want to be a yeller. I didn't want to be that guy. And so I found the Positive Coaching Alliance, and you can Google it, Positive Coaching Alliance. It's a national known organization. And I read a book called The Double Goal Coach. But the thing I took away most was, for every time you offer a criticism or a correction, it must be preceded by 7 affirmations or encouragements. So I had 0 affirmation or encouragement. All I did was correction and criticism. I thought that was a coach. But as a recovery coach, think about when the people you're working with, if you can offer encouragement and affirmation, and not even if the correction doesn't become part of your method of operation, it's more about asking questions, and you become much more effective. So, and I learned that from youth soccer. So I sat back, did all my training, and I was just a cheerleader by the time I ended my 12-year career, if you will, of a travel coach, just cheering my kids on. And that's what we do as recovery coaches. As people succeed, we encourage and we cheer them on. And I had to really learn and train myself how to offer encouragement. It's a great gift you can give to one another. to each other, to your colleagues, to anyone you meet. Encouragement. People don't hear it too often. Think about when was the last time you were encouraged. And Travis, there is no need for you to jump in with these things that say, let's go Rangers. And he's pumping his fist over there and all that kind of stuff.
He heard hockey and he turned around right quick.
I don't know what that's about. So we talked often, and it's another leg of the stool is about asking good questions. Okay? Have anybody ever had any training on motivational interviewing? Raise your hand if you have. Anybody? So this is a note for you to really carry this on to another. There, someone just held up the book. Aaron held up the book. There's another. If you Google motivational interviewing, you can find hours of YouTube videos. You can sign up for courses anywhere that are from a few hours to semester-long courses in colleges. Motivational interviewing is a thing. I think what the people that kind of discovered and promoted motivational interviewing is they listened to a lot of people who are already naturally inclined to ask really good questions. And they came up with these 5 different categories about expressing empathy, walking in someone's shoes. My favorite is developing discrepancy, which is you say you want to do this, but you continue to do that. Tell me how those two align with each other. And though you can apply that in so many different areas, things about avoiding argument and rolling with resistance. We don't have to win anything. My sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've heard for 30 plus years, would you rather be happy or right? And when I'm being my smart aleck self, I'll say, I want to be both. Yes, definitely. But it's really about trying to not win arguments all the time. What's the point in winning the argument? And support self-efficacy or self-sufficiency is very closely related to treating people like a resource, that you believe they can do this themselves. So how do you do that? And what questions can you ask? They also talk about on page 10 in your manual about open-ended questions, affirmation, reflective or active listening that we talked about, in summary and reflection. Those are the OARS, O-A-R-S. And so you see those. So again, this is the tip of the iceberg. We go into detail in the Full Recovery Coach Academy. And I want you to practice asking good questions, okay? And I understand this is baseline, but I want to see, for you to experience and start to discover your own art of asking questions. So Travis is going to do his best to break you out into groups of 4. And what I want to do is we're going to do a short role play. I know everybody, you're so thrilled with role plays. I can see it on your faces, right? So this is one of the things that you love to do most. So one of you is going to be the recovery coach. One of you is going to be a recovery who, this is like the second or third time you have met. And the recovery is going to be slightly resistant. And so the recovery coach is just not going to tell the person what to do, but to continue to ask questions. The other 2 are going to observe. So I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to have the role play, figure out who's the recovery and the recovery coach. And then I'm going to give you like 2-3 minutes for feedback. And this is just a baseline. There is no right or wrong. No one's going to be graded. Learn from one another. Think of things that you might have been able to do better, or things, and point out and encourage and affirm the questions that were really, really good. A little complicated, but I have faith in this group. You are the best recovery coaching basics class ever. So I am fully confident that you guys can do this. I'll see you back here. Well, before I do that, is everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do? Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, I'll see Melissa back here first in 8 minutes. No, she's not going to be back now. So you guys practiced a little bit, and I know I put you on the spot and stretched you maybe, hopefully. Anybody care to share what that was like in your group? I'm curious. So this is the part where somebody would raise their hand or unmute their mic and they would share with the group.
Oh, Melissa's got her hand up.
She has that. Yeah, there you go.
I'm using a computer that is not normally mine. I keep forgetting where everything is. Nathan he was the recovery coach and I was the recovery, which he did a really good job. I thought he asked things like, I told him I might not be able to get out of what I'm doing because I'm still in my community. I'm still with all the people that I did my drinking with, and I don't really have anywhere to go. And, I had too much anxiety thinking not drinking is what I think about every day. So like getting a job might be too much, and he gave me a lot of, what about trying these things, like maybe working with animals. We do this program where we ride horses, and I really liked how he gave a lot of suggestions. He didn't say, well, the other people do this and this works. It was more like, here's 8 different things that might help you through your recovery to take your mind off of it and to get you away from these people. And which one of these things might you like? So he did a really good job. And then we had Cassie, who has been through recovery, and it was really nice hearing her give her feedback because she's done it. And she, said that he did a good job and was encouraging and gave us some feedback that was very encouraging.
Thank you, Melissa. Good to hear. Hey, Johnny, did you have your hand up or did you put it back down?
Yes, no, I have my hand up, and normally the other classes prior, we would raise our hand instead of just cutting in and speaking out. That's why I raised my hand up.
I appreciate that. That works too.
Yes. Yes, but we had a good 4 of us, me, Aaron, Debbie, and Lieutenant Stokes. We had a good one. I was acting as the addict, and Aaron, she was I was the recovery, and she was the recovery coach. And we had some good role reversal. I enjoyed it. I learned, even though I was a difficult addict, but she gave me the soft touch. So the soft touch was pretty good. Sometimes, that's how, like Lieutenant said, sometimes you got to give it soft, sometimes you got to give it hard. It depends on the person, who they are. But it was really good, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. You bring up the point about, soft, hard, whatever, the approach. And what we are talking about here is some of this, what we describe as the science of recovery coaching, just the asking questions, the listening. How you coach is your own personal art. And many times when you go through trainings, you don't hear about the art. And you just mentioned it, that I'm going to coach in a situation differently than Stacy, differently than Travis, differently than you. And that's okay. And we support that at CCAR, that how you approach it is your art. Trust the art. There's not one way fits everyone. So that sounds like it was a good exercise. Thank you for stretching and participating. It's not always easy to do role plays, but it sounds like it went pretty well, and thank you for that. So I'm going to move it over and slide the camera over to Stacy, who's going to take you. Stacy, come on now.
I'm here.
Can they see you?
Yes, they can see me.
All right.
I'm sitting, but they can still see me. So I'm going to bring you through another leg of the stool. And there's a few pieces of this that's encompassed in the discovering and managing your own stuff. And the reason why we talk about this and that it's important is that sometimes we may have some preconceived notions about things. We may automatically dismiss maybe what somebody is telling us just because of our personal experience with it or what have you. And so the first part of this is this slide. It says a place for elephants, is really talking about and thinking about what our own thoughts are about addiction, you know, and what has addiction been like in our life, whether personal, family members, or what have you, and realizing that it is, you know, it's large, it's all encompassing. Addiction isn't just about the disease of addiction. It comes in and it affects the relationships we have. It may have come and interrupted our ability to work, our ability to have, you know, and be among people. You know, when I was growing up and younger, I never had kids sleep over my house because my father was an addict and I never knew when he came home which dad was going to be home. And so I did a lot of pushing some of those things aside. And this is why I said, you know, I never really realized how much that affected me until I started going through trainings like this and realizing that that did really have a big impact on the things that I had access to growing up, the way that I had even relationships as an adult, and, you know, always waiting for that shoe to drop because that is how I lived. You know, I never knew what was going to set my dad off. You know, my dad was the greatest, funniest, loving, caring guy when he was sober. And when he wasn't, he could be this terrible, ugly monster. And so I sometimes, you know, have to think about those things. And always, this is where I talk about managing my stuff. I have to kind of go in and know that that's my stuff, you know, and not everybody who struggles is going to have that same thing. Or if somebody has a couple too many drinks, that's going to be something that happens with them. And so I can't assume and make assumptions based on things that I experienced. And so when we're going through and we're helping people through whatever this recovery process looks like for them, we can't automatically sit there and say their recovery should look like this, or, well, that didn't work for my dad, or that didn't work for me. Again, making sure that we treat that person as their own best resource. When my father passed away a few years ago of cancer, and he was in recovery, active recovery. He was on an MAT program. And I remember going to his house and opening his fridge.
What's MAT?
Oh, medication assisted treatment. Thank you, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Suboxone for his heroin addiction. And I went over to his house and I opened his fridge and I saw like a 6-pack of Bud Lights. And I was like, automatically, I was like, you're not sober, you're not working a program, what are you doing? And he's like, Stacy, I have cancer. If I can enjoy a can of beer without, you know, going off the deep end because I am practicing my recovery and I want to do this, like, it's okay. And I really had to manage that stuff and respect his wishes, respect his definition of recovery, and support him, you know, and knowing that that wasn't going to turn into things. But again, these are things that come up for us. And as coaches and as people wanting to help others, we have to remember to not allow the things that we have and we're dealing with kind of fall into the help and, you know, supports that we're giving to somebody else who is going through this. And so I know we had you go through the next few pages as part of your homework in regards to what is addiction and what does addiction mean to me. And so we're just going to kind of go through, and I think Travis will go through the next slide and ask you, you know, so what were some of the feelings that resonated with you when you read through this? And I'm just going to open it up and see if somebody wants to maybe share a little bit of what they were feeling when they were going through those pages. A hand up, please. I'll be like, Phil, can I get one hand up?
What page? I'm sorry. What page are you speaking
So
about?
we were
13?
talking about, yeah, so we started on page 13, and then we had you read through all the way up to 17. So just the pages on addiction.
Okay.
Oh, yes, Johnny.
Hi. Yes. What you was talking about, as well as before I talk about the way I felt in my addictions, I can identify with you. The way you was talking and saying that your father, you didn't know which one was coming in, because me myself, a good friend of mine, they would call me. They don't know if Johnny coming in or if Jay coming in. They would call me Jay, when I'm drinking and I'm, out of my mind, But
Wow.
yes, when I was reading this stuff and kicking back, all the things and the person that I was when I was getting high and using drugs and not caring about people, the feeling of not caring, it had me think back, the monster that I was because of my addiction and the way it led me to, and the people that I hurt when I was using drugs and alcohol. I didn't care about nobody, So once I did clean myself up, I went back and apologized to every person that I hurted, and let them know that I was so sorry from the bottom of my heart, because it wasn't me. Because I know when I was my mindset, it wasn't a mindset of the person that I was or I used to be. Once that the influence of drugs and alcohol got into me, it was just I was totally a monster, like you said. I was a monster, not caring, very hurtful towards people, didn't care what I said to them, in any manner. The addiction had me that way. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate that. Cassie.
So with reading through these pages, I was looking at, I think it was, sorry, I don't have my book with me right now.
No, that's okay.
I seen with childhood trauma and past trauma and stuff, but I think that, because I've read up on like the hippocampus and how that affects, addiction, how it's connected with, trauma and, addiction and, the behaviors of addiction and everything else. And like with me, I had to realize when I was going through recovery, what was the root of the problem? I had to realize it was like because of PTSD from, relationships and stuff I never really dealt with. I just put the bottle to my mouth instead of actually dealing with those things. So I think that's a good thing that, you guys say that, because the way the hippocampus works, obviously you guys know that, a lot of people do, you have to literally rewire your brain. It's like a child that if they get yelled at all the time or screamed at all the time and not told what they did wrong, or if they experience trauma, they might have problems later in life. And, with like the dialectic behavioral therapy and everything else, you really need to get to the root of the problem when you're working with people in addiction. I go to a therapist every week just to talk about my anxiety and how it's through the roof and everything else. And, I really have to actually do trauma work with the PTSD. And, I think that's a good thing that, that's brought up. And I think another problem though, not with this, obviously not this program, because this program is great, but a lot of people are not aware of how bad the crisis is with opioid addiction or any type of addiction. It needs to be more of an open talk with everybody, around, New Milford, where I used to live, there's no sober houses. There's maybe one AA meeting a month if you're lucky. I live in Torrington now, and there's more talk about it, but you see these people struggling with addiction. There's not any community outreach like Waterbury has, and that would be a great thing to have around here, in these smaller communities, so more people become aware of what's really going on, and so we could really get to the root of the problem. Not that it's going to make everybody want to change, because you want to, if you want to change, you have to want it for yourself.
For
But,
sure.
you know, I think as a whole, this whole world, you know, it really is a problem. And there's so many people losing their lives because of addiction, whether it's alcohol, opioids, anything. You know, it really needs to be a more talked about issue so we could help people that are going through it.
Thanks, Cassie. I appreciate that. I'm going to take one more comment from Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi, guys. Cassie just brought up a great comment. She just brought up exactly what I was going to talk about, the elephant in the room. What most people don't like to talk about it. I talk about it. What led to my addiction was you got to deal. I was very angry at the world. My own husband of 22 years didn't know what was wrong with me because I hid behind a smile. Didn't know what was wrong with me. I was in so much pain spiritually and emotionally. I used to blame myself for my brother's death, so I took pills that a doctor gave to me. I never went over prescription dose, but under that pain, under taking those pills, I was numbing the pain that I was in from my brother's death, and that was the cause of my issue, and I had to deal with those emotions. That was the root of the pain. And working in the recovery field, I always tell people, when I told this doctor this, he thought I was crazy. I said, you're not solving the problem. You're numbing the problem by giving me medication. I need to find an alternate route. I need to deal with the root of the issue that's causing this. And to this day, he thinks I was crazy 4 years later, which is okay. It's okay. I wish I would have had a recovery coach. I wish I would have had one 4 years ago to advocate for me then. But this is why I'm doing this for a living now.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I didn't have somebody to do this for me.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you saying that, because so many people do come, and when they go through the trainings, they say, you know, I wish I had a coach, you know, to come and help me walk through this process, you know, and I know the reasons my dad was a Vietnam vet too, you know, and so he came back with a lot of issues and a lot of trauma, and also access to a lot of drugs while he was in service. And so coming back as a 20-year-old guy who was married and whatnot, and had me very shortly after, you know, he had a lot that he was going on, and drugs and alcohol helped him cope. So I appreciate that. And I think, you know, one of the things of this, and I'm sorry the question is written poorly, is that, you know, whether or not we have a personal connection to addiction or not, it is truly important for us as recovery coaches to just understand more about it and understand how we feel about addiction, so that if those things come up for us, if those things come up and make us feel a certain kind of way, we don't react to maybe what somebody says to us when we're helping them with using our own filters. You know, we want to take those off so that we are truly guiding someone through their own process of recovery, and not just what we think it should look like for them. Phil, I think you want to take on the next piece.
Oh, I would just love to.
Yes.
I would love to. You know, the B-52s, right? The Love Jet.
Yes.
No. Anyway, I don't know. Sometimes I just have these non sequiturs. I don't know where they come from. We're talking a lot about addiction and the elephant, and there's a question on page 12, if you look back. And what are some examples of stuff that you can think of? So when you think of addiction, right, or somebody who's addicted or somebody who's alcoholic, you normally have some strong opinions, and they might not be yours personally anymore, or they might still be, but they're still out there. So if I say the term, there's an addict over there, what do you think of the addict? Put those terms in the chat box. When you think of addict, like that person's addicted over there, what do you think of? And it's the first thought. There's nothing right or wrong. I'm not looking for positive or negative. I want you to really be vulnerable and share some of the things that you think. good for you, Ryan, a person who is sick, a junkie, right? So those are two right there and there. There's two differing opinions that are on either side of the scale, right? An addict, a human being, someone hopeless, right? That person is an addict, a negative feeling. Correct. It is a negative feeling oftentimes, according to who. Those are, yeah, very good. Am I safe? Yep. Very true. So those are all kinds of things about addict. They're alone, a hustler, lock the doors. All of that's true. We often get into a lot of those terminologies. And if you forward to page 18, right, we have this idea of stigma. And it's a stereotype. It's always helps divide us versus them. We put a label on them so we can separate them out. You lose your social status. You're often discriminated against. Also denies you aspects of healthcare in a lot of ways. And it's usually not a favorable thing to be stigmatized. If you look, and we started to do this a little bit, in your small groups, it's saying generate a list of words, but we just did that a little bit. I want you to think about why we label. And if you look on page 19, we have a lot of information about this idea of stigma. So in your small groups, and we're going to have a break at 12, so we're about 15 minutes out from our break. I want to take some time to discuss some of the barriers and some of the stigmatizing influences that prevent people from getting help in your area. How have you encountered stigma, and what does that look like? And then before we take our little break, we'll also have some time to discuss a different approach besides looking through this problem through the stigma lens. But I want you to discuss stigma, put it out there, let's talk about it, and I'll bring you back here again in 8 minutes. Is everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do?
Yes.
All right, thanks for that. Yes, I appreciate that. See you back here in 8 minutes. You take care of her, please. She's giving me a hard time.
Just a little bit of one.
So anybody want to share about what it was like in the small groups talking about stigma? Anybody at all? Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate you.
So I found ours really interesting because immediately you start talking about, the people on the street who have problems and what their stigma is. But Erin was like, when she had a drinking problem, she wasn't a street person. She was a normal person who had a job and who succeeded in life. And so the stigmas are so different depending on your status of life. The one spectrum doesn't want to tell people because they're embarrassed and they don't want to have everybody know their business. Whereas maybe if you are somebody who has been in trouble and you have an opioid addiction and you're out, maybe homeless or flopping, you can't go get help because you might be arrested. Like the fears and the stigma are different depending on where you're coming from in life.
Yeah, great point. Thank you for sharing. Johnny.
Hi. We have had a good conversation. Officer Brandon, Officer Ryan, and the young lady from Idaho. I don't want to mess your name up there. But and I was explaining how I felt when I was out there using. I felt useless. I felt lonely. I felt worthless. And I wouldn't want to. I felt no one cared about me. I just I was angry. But I just continue to use because that's the way that I felt when I was using. Worthless. and that nobody cared about me, pitied myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
Yeah, as an observer, when I ran my trauma program, and it's very similar, I found that to a degree, a lot of the stigma was around socioeconomic issues. So the more someone felt they had a status in the community, the more privately ashamed they were, and publicly almost deriding people who had issues.
Wow.
So that's what I found. Whereas people who are normal people, as I call them, people like us, were open and treated people who had the issues openly and welcomed them in and gave them warmth and shared with them. And those are the two very apparent things that I found.
Thank you, Aaron. A couple thoughts on stigma as we wrap up is if you look on page 19, you can some reasons why we want to eliminate stigma and because of the impact, and then there's some actual suggestions on how you might be able to help individually, what we can do. I have a couple more to add, and I've been working with stigma now since I joined CCAR, which was 22 years ago, designed a lot of trainings around it. And a few years ago, I said the number one thing we can do to combat stigma is stop using the word stigma. Because every time we talk about the stigma, we reinforce it. So, for example, if I told you not to think of a blue monkey holding a yellow banana swinging from one arm from a brown branch, you have to think of that. So I won't participate, or we won't participate in stigma slams or ending stigma campaigns or smash the stigma, because that's not what we're about. I'm not alone in this. Mother Teresa once said, please don't invite me to your anti-war rally, but I will gladly attend your pro-peace march. And so when we talk about ending stigma, what is the solution? It's about promoting recovery. And if we can promote recovery and normalize recovery, hopefully we start to make a dent in the stigma attitude. Does that make sense? And so everything we're talking about is promoting recovery, normalizing recovery. Aaron talked about the level of shame about going into recovery. That's what we want to eliminate, that it's okay to seek help, to seek treatment, to make it a sickness, not a moral failure, right? And that's where really the stigma surrounds from, when people start thinking of it as a moral failure. If only they didn't do that. I mean, we even see it in the emergency departments where discharge plans are simply, and we've seen them written on the discharge plan, stop using heroin. Yeah, it makes it, that's the goal, but there's a little more to stopping using heroin than just stopping. If we could just stop, we would have a long time ago. We know what it's doing. So anyway, we're at 12 o'clock. We're going to come back in 15 minutes and continue with, I think we're going to continue with stages of change. Make sure that you've worked on the Change in My Life piece. That's on page 20. And I'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Okay? Get something to eat, recharge. See you soon.
I'm like,
So,
isn't that what we all want?
You guys are back. Ryan, can you just tell me on the screen, do you see half the slide or do you see the full slide, the PowerPoint?
I see half.
Oh, see, so we got a technology glitch here. Melissa,
So
is it the same for you? Half a slide or the
No,
full
no,
slide?
I see the full slide. It's just on half the screen.
Oh, got it. Okay, because we're only seeing half a slide on half a screen. So as long as you guys can read the whole slide, give me a
Nice.
thumbs up.
All right, cool.
All right, good.
The whole slide.
Just getting into a great conversation, we get dragged back. The recovery conversation is a very important conversation. Do you guys want to have more time with it? Yes, no, maybe? You good? Because I'm also willing to be a little flexible because I know how important that one is. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about it. Aaron, share a little bit about your conversation. I know it's the first thing in the morning, so I want to keep you awake, Aaron, over there. So come on, tell me, Aaron G.
Mate, matchsticks work really well for your eyes. No, it was, I guess, yeah. I guess I was, Aaron was relating her story, and you know, it was, I guess part of it was I saw some of myself in some of the things she said, but I've always denied that could be a possibility. So it was a reality check for me, but that she was so open and frank and committed to the path she's now taken. I thought it was just really impressive, and you know, I was just loving what she was saying and loving the frankness of what she was saying.
Thank you, Aaron. Anybody else? So we talk about recovery because recovery means a lot to a lot of different people. There have been many attempts at defining it. It's almost like defining hope or love or faith or recovery. It's a construct. A couple key points that a lot of people stumble upon, in my experience, are in your personal definition of recovery, does it have to be abstinent-based? And what are your thoughts about medication, like prescribed medication? Because there are some popular programs of recovery that will say that even if you're on prescribed medication, say for depression or anxiety, that you're not really in recovery. So I want to illustrate this concept of recovery a little bit using on the next slide and on pages, I think you can see it on pages 25 and 26, where we ask you to do some, we ask you some questions. So use the workbook. This is for you. We can't go over every concept, but I wanted you to see some of them, which are, we believe that some of the general characteristics are that it's self-directed, it's individualized, it's not a cookie cutter, it's not a kind of a stamp process that everybody goes through. People are empowered. Holistic means it takes care of the mind, body, spirit. Non-linear, to kind of go to, I think it was Cassie's point about there might be 3 steps forward, a step back, something like that. Always focus on strengths, supported by peers and colleagues. And then we want to have these values of respect, responsibility, and hope. And finally, if you look on how we've come to define recovery, it's the next slide, Travis, and so on page 27, a person is in recovery if they say they are. How many people have seen that before? And we at CCAR have been around for 22 plus years. When we were forming CCAR, we thought we needed to define what we meant by recovery. And we had like Saturdays scheduled out, and we met for 6 hours, and it took us like 5 Saturdays to come up with this definition. And it really stemmed from when somebody said, how do you define membership in Alcoholics Anonymous? And all that's required is a desire to stop drinking. Who determines whether that person has the desire or not? And that's the person, right? So we let the people define recovery. And again, I told you some of the key components. Here are 2 recovery coach questions that I want you to write down that are the most important questions, your most powerful questions. The first one is, how can I help you with your recovery today? So as a coach, that's the first question. We often say that to each other at CCAR. We say, how can we help you with your recovery today? And the second question is, what does recovery look like for you? And then, bingo, you're like 50% of the way there to being an effective recovery coach. Because then if you can just listen, discover and manage your own stuff, then you can probably come up with some solution as to what the next step might be. How can I help you with your recovery today? What does recovery look like for you? I think also what I want to talk about here is this idea of personal recovery, my own stuff. And let me just tell you a little bit about my recovery, all right? I told you before that I have 33 plus years in recovery. First of all, I want to say that my recovery, my personal recovery, I was doing massive amounts of cocaine, drinking, smoking back in the mid-'80s, late '80s. My recovery is abstinent-based, right? I cannot use alcohol or drugs. That's for me. My recovery is 12-step based. All right, so for the first 10, 15 years, I was going to a lot of 12-step meetings. Specifically, that 12-step meeting was Alcoholics Anonymous. And Alcoholics Anonymous taught me my fourth thing, that I believe in a higher power. And so it's very faith-based, that the higher power could relieve me of my alcoholism, and it has. I have 33 years of evidence to prove that. Finally, the fifth part of that is I defined my higher power as my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. All right, so that's me personally. All right, hopefully you respect that that was my pathway, that you've seen that it's worked. Now, my question to you is, as a recovery coach, if I believed everybody must follow that exact pathway, how effective would I be? Right? You're saying not very effective, right? So my second question then is, knowing that that's my personal pathway, do you believe that I could effectively support other people's pathways, even though it differed from mine? Right, Aaron? Of course. Because that's the whole role of the recovery coach. I am not here to get people to go to abstinent-based recoveries, 12-step recovery, get down on their knees and confess and make Jesus Christ their Lord and Savior. That's not what I'm about. If I act with care, love, and compassion, I can support other people's recovery. I can be curious about their recovery. And of course, I can support it. Because you know what I found after 10 years of personal recovery? That I no longer had to defend my pathway. Because Nathan or Melissa or Johnny decided to recover a different way than me, I only need to celebrate that. they're still part of the club. And finally, the last story I heard was Tommy Rosen talks a lot about this analogy, is that it's like two people took different pathways up to the mountaintop, right? And they got to the mountain and they stand there looking at each other and they start arguing about the best pathway to get there. But wait, we're both standing on the top of the mountain. We have light in our eyes. Our lives have gotten better. We're being of service. Why do we need to argue about the best way to get there? If you discover a new pathway up and into recovery, good for you, good for us, good for the recovery community, good for the world. I do not have to defend or coerce people down a certain path. And that is also a key component of recovery coaching. Any thoughts or comments about that? I'd love to hear from somebody because I like to stir the pot. Did I stir your pots? Melissa, and then Johnny.
I did a lot of work with domestic violence survivors, and when I was in Texas for 10 years. So I just see the parallels, I guess. Same thing. I mean, they're recovering, they're survivors. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today, I've been through similar training for, helping domestic violence survivors get out of their situations. So same thing, I'm not going to tell a woman that she's not a survivor because she's not where I think she should be. And the same thing with, with this training is, I'm not going to tell you where you are. I want you to tell me where you are. So I really like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well said. Johnny.
I like the different aspects. Everybody does something different. Like you were saying, one guy came up the mountain one way, the other one came up, but they both got up the mountaintop. So what's good for someone else may not be good for others. So to each his own. Something that works for you, that's good. Something that works as long as it's keeping a person clean and sober. However they do it, if they want to stay clean, and my goal is to help them stay clean and sober, that's good. That's a good thing. So that's the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Anybody else? All right, let's jump ahead to the stages of recovery. We'll make another leap here. And it's important to understand, do we believe that addiction progresses? The more you partake in an addictive behavior, the worse it gets, right? Would you agree with that? Nod your head if you agree. A lot of you have your cameras off, so I can't see you, but I'm assuming you're like nodding your head in agreement. And what these pages on 28 and 29 point to is the progressive nature of recovery, that it keeps getting better and better. The more you practice recovery principles, the better you get at it. So what I'd like you to do is look at those pages, think about any thoughts that you can share. I want you to review the stages of recovery with your group. We're going to break out into 3 groups again, and this is important too, and I'll tie it all up for you and connect it all when you come back from your 10-minute discussion. Is everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do? I just want you to talk about and review pages 28 and 29. We good? All right. See you back here in 10. So, welcome back. Stages of recovery is a real important piece. Right after you went on breakout, Stacy kind of talked about why she feels it's a real important part of this curriculum. So she's going to be the first person I call on.
Hi, everybody. So a lot of people who come into trainings like this may not have a personal connection or be in personal recovery. And so we don't really understand the process or the journey firsthand. You know, we rely on what people are telling us about their experiences. And as somebody, I've shared that my father struggled with addiction, and he did go into multiple treatment, detox here and there. And I never realized how much that is just the first part of the recovery process. I always had these expectations when he came out that he was going to be better. He was going to be right as rain. Everything was fine. He did what he needed to do, and now he's back, and now I have my dad back. And in all honesty, I think it's probably the hardest part is getting out of a treatment situation where you had everything kind of planned out. All of your days were very structured. You had time for meetings, time for therapy, time for this, time for that. And when you come out, you're having to navigate everything else on your own without a lot of supports. And so when you have the pressures of maybe even families having high expectations of what to expect when people come out, it can make it even harder. And so going through trainings like this and seeing this kind of laid out, what the stages of recovery actually are in terms of time frame or what people are learning as they go through it, gave me such an eye-opening understanding of like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have known this then, because I might have been a better support. I might have, not had such high expectations. And so I think just having this framework as an understanding of what the recovery process is hugely helpful. Not only as a recovery coach or somebody supporting somebody else, but even as friends and family to understand what somebody might be going through.
Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. When I train this during the Recovery Coach Academy, I often use my own story of recovery to talk about the 5 stages, stabilization generally being the first year. And again, those aren't written in stone time frames. It's a framework. And so some of the things that happen in connectedness could happen for others right away in stabilization and vice versa. It's just a way to illustrate some of the progress in recovery. And deepening is generally considered year 2, connectedness years 3 to 5, integrations year 6 to 10. And that's when the study ended. And so we knew there was more after integration. So we put together this thing called fulfillment of 10 years and beyond, and there may be more. And I've had this all come true for me one way or another just by simply working a program of recovery. So I'm very curious, too, about hearing some of your experience as you dove into the stages of recovery. Would anybody be willing to share with the group as you looked into this? What did you discover? Susan.
Hey guys, I guess that how my experience can help somebody else and where we are. I guess going through the stages of recovery, I didn't realize, even though I reviewed this last night, didn't realize where I am. I know where I am in the stages, but I didn't realize more deep in the stages where I am. If I can, do you understand what I'm saying by that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? What was your conversation like? What did you discover? So I am looking for somebody. I'm comfortable with silence, so Come on, somebody share what you looked about stages of recovery, what you're thinking. You're all thinking something. Just share it with us. Johnny.
Spoke about a stabilization. I had felt more, once I knew what I was doing and I was able to focus more on myself and getting myself together. I felt more stabilized, knowing where the outreaches was, where the meetings was, who to talk to. I felt good, and one thing I also said that I mentioned that I was able to have more money. I had money, that was a good thing for me, because I know when I was in the world or using, I didn't have no money. Everything went to drugs or crack or drinking, and the young lady, Miss Williams, she had mentioned something about, drinking and stuff. And I myself, I couldn't have one drink. It wouldn't stop at one drink. I had to drink everything up. That's the only way it would end for me when I was drinking. It was not you drink here and that's it. I just had to drink everything up, and that was it. So I understand and I identify with people who says if they're around somebody and they see drinks or beer or whatever. Yes, I couldn't just have one socially. No, I have to drink it all. That's my social. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. I have no off switch. You and I share that in common. I just don't know what that is, an off switch. Cool. So we've covered a lot of ground. And so the next piece is I want to tie the stages of recovery to the stages of change that we just reviewed, right? And Travis is going to pull up a slide. And you can see on the bottom that we have the stages of change, right? That we go from pre-contemplation all the way up to maintenance, okay? On top of that are the stages of recovery, the stabilization, deepening, connectedness, integration, and fulfillment, right? The stages of recovery are all in the maintenance phase of the stages of change. Do you get that? Stages of recovery are all in the maintenance phase of stages of change. So and I talked about this with Dr. D. Clementi, who wrote the stages of change, is that, it's not very exciting for people in recovery the way it's written, because you get to maintain, and in some models, like was discussed here, you get to relapse. Those don't sound like two very exciting options when it comes to recovery. I get to maintain the change. Okay, maintenance is kind of boring. Or I get to relapse, which is kind of devastating. So the stages of recovery, when you drop it in there, you can see how maintenance is really quite exciting, that you can recover and you can progress and you can strive, and grand things will happen in a person's life. Any questions about that? Do you see how it's tied together? Yes? You do, Melissa? Good. Good. Mike's got it too. I know he does. Nathan does too. Here's the thing. Tori, you got a thumbs up for me? Cool. Thank you. The thing that I would like to ask you is, you have all those categories. Where do you think the wheelhouse is for recovery coaches? Where do they work primarily? And you can put your answer in the chat box if you like. Where do they work? If you're going to say this is where the recovery coach works mostly, where is that in this diagram? Are you getting any responses? I'm not getting any responses. Nobody's putting it in. All the way through the maintenance stages.
We got
maintenance.
One response.
A to Z. everywhere. Please, not treatment facilities. And I'll tell you why, Johnny. Stabilization. Action. The way we have come to understand recovery coaching and is we believe that recovery coaches are most effective in the stabilization and deepening stages of recovery. So it's maintenance, and it's primarily those first couple years or so, and even then it's primarily in the first year. The primary role of a recovery coach is to support recovery, is to maintain and sustain recovery. It's not to initiate recovery, because unless you're working in the emergency department, most people think that coaches there are working in pre-contemplation, contemplation, all that. However, our data indicates that most of the people we talk to, over 75% or so, take some type of action and move into maintenance, take some type of action. So because they're not saying no, they're saying yes, we do need help. The other piece to that is the clinical treatment world, where you go away to treatment, works in the first few stages of change, not recovery coaches. That is the work of a clinician to move people from contemplation, preparation, all of that. So there are two different worlds here, and this is the way to illustrate it, is that, and I use this story a lot, that my son Joshua played soccer. We're going back to soccer, and he tore his ACL, his anterior cruciate ligament in his knee, his junior year. And so he had to get surgery and have that ligament replaced. Oftentimes, treatment for an active addiction is the surgery piece, okay? That's where recovery is initiated. My son Joshua never would have returned to the soccer field and played soccer again unless he'd underwent physical therapy. Recovery support services are the physical therapy to a treatment. Does that make sense? So there's two separate worlds, and recovery coaches work in the physical therapy arena. To go to your point, Johnny, about working in treatment settings, is that coaches need other coaches to help people maintain and sustain their recovery by having a variety of recovery supports. In the community, when you work in a treatment setting, you only have those supports that are available to you, and you're often an isolated recovery coach. So there is a blog I wrote that's called No Coaches an Island on the CCAR.us website. And it really talks about that coaches need other coaches to do their work effectively. Any thoughts or questions or opinions or feedback on what I just shared? All right, so let's break them out into three groups. And you have this document here. You also have I want you to just take the time before we go into multiple pathways of recovery it's almost like a free discussion. It's 8:20. I'm going to give you 1:28, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk about any questions, comments, feedbacks, anything so far that we've covered that you might want clarification on, or anything that was an epiphany or a learning for you. Everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do for the next 10 minutes? All right, thanks, Melissa. See you back here in 10. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Anybody have anything they'd like to share about that discussion? Help me out. Make my day. Aaron V., I'm calling on you. This is outside of my thing. I want to hear what you have to say.
Now he's just going to call on people.
And I know
I think it was incredible. I was with, I think, everyone in law enforcement except Lieutenant Mike. And I shared a little bit just kind of about my experience, and I was listening with just kind of awe on some of the experiences of what law enforcement is going through now. And it really got me thinking about like who's caring for our caregivers, and you know how pervasive drinking culture probably is in every way. You know, I was in the wellness industry. People do yoga and then drink wine. People, you know, like I thought of it as like self-care, and it must be for people in high stress environments. You know, I just kind of was like, my heart was really feeling for people who need to like be caring for everybody else. You know, and I can see the members of law enforcement with us today, and y'all seem so interested in giving, but I really hope that there's time for receiving too. And wow, that was a really unexpected and amazing experience I just had. So I'm kind of blown away.
Well, that's good. That's great feedback. I love to hear stuff like that. Anybody else? What was that like for you? Kind of your quick recap, talking about stages of change, stages of recovery, anything at all? So I don't get to hear from Nigeria too often, so I might call on Tori.
In our group, we actually, look, Aaron was always in my group, and now Aaron got to be with the officers, and I got to be with Lieutenant Stokes. So he was the officer that was missing from the group. And it was my first time being in a group with him. But he said something that was so heartwarming or so profound to me, not to me, to the group, in talking about how in recovery coaching that we are there to support. And he talked about how, you know, we lost the war on drugs because, you know, during the crack epidemic, we were putting people in jail. And he's like, we just can't arrest people to make this go away. And so to see that there's a different thought pattern behind mental health issues is really heartwarming when it comes to talking about opioids. And how we're really dealing with it, and that the police officers are now partnering and really seeking to get people to resources as opposed to just putting them in jail. So that was something that was really awesome to me.
Thank you, Tori. Johnny, you had your hand up. Would you like to share something too?
Yes. What Tori was saying, that is so true, and like I told the officers, I appreciated them, you know, what they do, and I know their jobs is hard, you know, but yeah, and to hear these guys talking and, you know, giving their words and their advice and the knowledge and know-how what they do, you know, is really, you know, very heartfelt, and it's really cool. I think it's a good thing, and you know, hey, thanks. I commend y'all, you know, my hat's off to y'all, you know, yeah. But, and also I was talking to the people in my group and telling them this tier was really good for me. I enjoyed, you know, the whole course because this is my last class. And on one side I was saying I'm glad it's over with, but it was very enlightening and you know, helpful to me in my life day by day as well. So I want to thank everybody that participated. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. We have one last little module. I want you to flip over to page 30. And this is a concept that we've really embraced here at CCAR and that recovery coaches embrace, are the multiple pathways of recovery. Now, we also know there are multiple pathways to recovery, and that's not what we're talking about. So, like, for me, it was the birth of my daughter when I stood in the the delivery room, strung out on cocaine. I knew I had to do something. People will talk about getting arrested or having a DUI or a car crash or getting kicked out of their house, all kinds of things that were the inciting incident, if you will, to get somebody into recovery. That's not the pathway we're talking about. we're talking about different pathways that are established or being explored now that a recovery coach could support if an individual says, I want to do something different than, say, the most common pathway is 12 steps, right? We've all heard of 12 steps, but there are many, many others that have emerged, especially over just the last 10 years. So I want you to take, I hope you wrote some of this down on page 30, and where we talk about what are some of the pathways you are aware of, and that's this prompt question, I think, on this slide, right? Is it? Do I have that right, Travis? The next slide? Yeah, what are pathways you know about? And I want you to spend 4 minutes in 2 groups. So I want you to make a list, and then I'm going to ask you, after your 4 minutes of batting this list back and forth, to write them all down in the chat so everybody can see these different pathways. And we'll share a little bit about some of the pathways we have found. You are also free to Google multiple pathways of recovery, see what you come up with, see what's out there, and because this is important for a recovery coach to know about how they can support recoveries. Everybody clear on what I'm asking you to do? Compile your list. You only have 4 minutes. See you back here soon. So you guys are getting pretty good at cyber transportation. The way you go through from one room to another is just amazing. How you're able to navigate all that. I hope all that doesn't like warp your minds or anything like that or whatever. Put them in. Let's go. Let's see that chat box fired up. I want to see it scrolling up with all the different pathways of recovery. Come on, who's going to be the first one? Could be a CCAR involved. Faith-based, there we go. Aaron V with the first one in. What is PIT? Is that PIT? Medication-assisted, SMART, 12-step, AA, NA, AWARE, ATODS, church. There you go. Peer-to-peer. Oh, PTP, that's what that was. Thank you, Johnny. Or Johan. Celebrate, acceptance and commitment therapy. So some of the other ones that are really popular, people have heard of Wellbriety, whitebison.org, that talks about Native American.
The Phoenix.
The Phoenix. There's Refuge Recovery, Life Ring, Celebrate Recovery, which is also faith-based. And so you will need to just look more and more from what's around you and Google that. And you know the number one way to build your resource bank of pathways of recovery is to ask your recoveries. You know, so more and more young people are finding adventure, nature, the Phoenix, which used to be Phoenix Multisports a few years ago. They talk about fitness and recovery, so those are all ways. The next thing I want to point you to, and we're running a little short on time here, we're coming down the wire, is this concept of recovery capital. And simply put, that every person has internal and external resources that they can bring to bear on the initiation and maintenance of recovery. So what would be an example of an external resource that a person might have? And the hint is Johnny mentioned it earlier. You can put it in the chat or you can just tell me. What would be an external resource? I think we must have a delay in our chat button because it doesn't. Nobody seems to. Maybe that it doesn't work. Maybe the chat's broken. So an external resource, it could be church, it could be a treatment center, it could be your own financial situation. You could have money. That could be, you have a few $1,000,000, you can purchase the best treatment in the world for your addiction, right? So you have high external resources in that category. Some people might be flat broke, destitute. so they'd have to find other options. That goes for internal resources too. Somebody could have great faith or very little faith. Either one of those could work, all those kinds of things. So look up Recovery Capital, the way it's spelled there, CAPITAL. You can Google that, and there's plenty of information on the web. One of my favorite people in the world of recovery is Mr. William White, also known as Bill White. And Travis, if you could put this in the chat, it's williamwhitepapers.com is the link to his website. If you want to learn more about recovery resources and what's happening over the history of addiction treatment and recovery, Travis put the website in. It's really amazing. And so finally, the last piece that we will dive more into in the Recovery Coach Academy are the 10 roles of a recovery coach. And we put these out there and we explore them in detail. There's also an 11th role that we like to add is a storyteller. And this is kind of a refined art of storytelling as well. So learn more about that. Again, all tips of the icebergs. We're just scratching the surface. But we wanted to give you a brief overview of what it means to be a recovery coach and recovery coaching basics. You'll notice that some of the exercises, like on page 37, are what is an advocate, which is also a very key role, and what does that mean to you? Take some time to look at this. Embrace your elephant on page 39. And quickly, does anybody have any thoughts or feedbacks or comments or opinions about the last 4 hours we've had together or so about this training and recovery coach basics they'd like to share with Stacy and I and Travis and the group? Melissa.
I just want to say thank you, and it was great. The whole 4 hours was great. The organization of the class, the leadership of the class, all of it was just good. I feel like I know most of the people in this class after 4 hours because of the breakout sessions. And I love the mix of having law enforcement and people who are in recovery, active recovery, mixed together, because I feel like I learned a lot talking to, I'm always talking to law enforcement. So that's the perspective that I hear. And the just different perspectives was just amazing. I think it's really good, and I very much want to take the full course after doing this.
Thank you, Melissa. It was great having you in class. You're a good sport too. Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. Just from what Melissa said, it's good to get people in the recovery community like here, telling their stories. And it's, I think we as law enforcement opened up a little bit, and I think that's really important for everyone to see, because we're kind of like all in this world together, and we're here to just try to protect people. And I think that needs to be kind of put out there a lot more than what you see on Facebook and the internet. The internet is absolutely destroying our industry.
Yeah.
And we're trying to really do the right things. Are we perfect? No, but nobody's perfect. But I think this small little group and this discussion that we had today definitely opened up some minds to what we do and kind of how we handle stuff. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that very much. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
Phil, I know you don't like that idea of like holding space, but you guys definitely provided a space for us all to show up. And for me, I definitely kind of came to get a taste test if getting a certification with CCAR was going to be right for me. And I'm definitely 100% in, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm really excited to have learned what I expected to learn, but also there was a lot of incredible sort of bonuses, hearing everyone's story and working with people in different sort of careers than me, be it law enforcement or, you know, different experiences than me. It was really eye-opening and well done. So thank you all very much. I appreciated hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Aaron. I like the concept of holding space. I just don't like the way they titled it. And I don't have a better one off the top of my head, so be that as it may. Aaron from Australia, you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that learning and sharing with the group has been excellent. It's been wonderful. It's been fantastic having the police involved as well. People only ever see one side of the police, which is the wrong side, or the side that the media decide to portray to us at any one point in time. I'd love to do the full course. I just have to work out how the hell I do it with the time zones.
I think you ought to invite me to come over and train a Recovery Coach Academy over in Australia or something like that. Get a group of people together.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, we could just come to you, Aaron. So
yeah, but can you cope with warm weather? I live in the tropics, remember?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, hey, maybe I could set up a CCAR group down here.
Yep, would love that. We could also adjust our time frame to make it work better for you, so we would be the people up in the middle of the night delivering the curriculum.
That's right. So, I know you have our contact information, so we'll get in touch for sure.
I look forward to that very much.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Stacy, do you have anything about getting certificate or wrap up?
All the fun stuff, right? So,
yeah. And then we'll let you go.
And then
finally.
we'll let you go, right? Aaron can maybe get some sleep in while it's still dark out. So as we wrap up, I know many of you have probably already gone through and done pre-work and things such as that, and hopefully you've been able to find the space to upload it. If not, never fear, we will send another email with the instructions and the direct link so that if you did not get your pre-work in, you can do that. The other piece is that Travis, who has been in the background producing, is going to go into the Protrax platform and mark your attendance once he has checked off your pre-work and your attendance here today, and you will receive an email once he does that from Protrax that will give you the link to an evaluation. As soon as you complete that evaluation, on your Protrax dashboard is where your certificate of attendance for today is. I know some people want to utilize their certificates towards either the RCP designation that we have here at CCAR or local certification, or to just let people know that you've attended this training on recovery. And so you can always access your Protrax dashboard and find it there. So if you have any other questions, feel free to get in touch with us. I believe you've all been working probably with Meisha very closely to get manuals and things. She's been emailing with you, and you can get in touch with her. It's just maysha@ccar.us, or you can reach out to me directly at Stacy, STACY, @ccar.us, or Phil too.
No. No, just kidding.
At philip@ccar.us. So, unless anybody has any other questions.
No, thank you all for your participation. Stacy was using her best airport voice, the one that comes over the intercom and says, your flight is now leaving gate 342. That was her voice there, so she does that in part-time. So thank you guys. We'll see you at another time, and it's been a pleasure. Take care.
Yes, thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to meet you.
Bye. Take care. Be safe.